The live இருக்கேன். Hello. வரேன். Invite people over. Good morning, friends. This is Ramanan, broadcasting to you on my take on Hinduism. I'm going to try to reply to some of your queries. Before I proceed further, I'd like to make few points. I've been researching Hinduism for the past 10 years, to be precise, from 2009 August, and I have been searching for answers which have been plaguing my mind for quite some time. When I was around 35 years old, around 25-30, I had a chance to read the book by Mahaperiva, Deivathin Kural. While I was going through some of the portions, I found that there were a lot of references by Kanchi Kamakodi Jagadguru Mahaperiva to some of the historical facts, which were astonishing. And of course, I left it at that. Then later, when I found the time, I started researching into it. When I read Indian history, I found a lot of contradictions. Number one, there seems to have been a gap from the time Alexander invaded India, right prior to that also, and there seems to have been nothing before Alexander invaded India. I was just unable to understand that fact, for a simple reason that we have such diversity of culture and such rich culture in our country, so many temples, architectural marvels, and a philosophy of Sanatana Dharma, which is very, 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 very vast and very intricate, and which stands the test of all the logical systems of the world today. Well, when I was looking at that, when I found time, about 10 years back, I started searching history. To my surprise, I found, thanks to internet, with the help of information available in other languages, not only in Indian regional languages and Sanskrit, and my mother tongue, of course, Tamil, which is one of the ancient languages, along with Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, Russian, all the world languages, now they are available online, and you will be able to get the information whatever you need, provided your search is very, very relevant and up to the point. I've been able to find so much of information which has been denied to us. Yes, a civilization which is over 5,000 years old. Now today, Vedas have been dated at about 5,000 years earlier. But unfortunately for these people, what has happened now is, now we have found Rakigar, archaeology itself, which is dated at 2500 BC, which means that Hinduism in its stage existed about 7,500 years back as a civilization here. On top of it, wait, this is not the earliest find we have. We have one site in Attirambakam, near Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India, where the site, archaeological site, is 1 million years old, which confirms the presence of an advanced Tamil civilizations of 1 million year old. I repeat, 1 million. That is 10 lakh years old, which speaks of highly advanced Tamilian civilization, which again speaks about the Vedas. And these are available. The artifacts excavated from Attirambakam is available at Vellore in Tamil Nadu, where they are displayed. One of my friends, Mr. Anil Gupta, I hope he is listening to this broadcast. He has taken the pains to go over there, taken the photographs, and he lamented the fact that they have been kept in a very unsafe condition, such a treasure. And we do have other evidences, thanks to Graham Hancock. See, we as a race, as Indians, have a tendency to believe and trust more the Western sources than our own grandfather. Unfortunately, this is the case. Thanks to Graham Hancock, detailed researches have been done near Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu and also Krishna's Dwaraka, and plus one important place, that is Pumbuhar, that is in Tamil Nadu coast. In Tamil Nadu coast near Mayavaram, Pumbuhar is the fag end of Indian archipelago, not exactly the fag end. Now this town this small place was once a very, very, very rich cultural town of Silappadigaram period, which is right now dated around, just be earlier dated around, around 3000, 2000 years ago, as if it's being a charity. But now, thanks to Hancock again, an excavation has been done and it has been found that it is being dated right now at 12,000 years ago. And this place was the birthplace of Silappadigaram, an epic poem, one of the 5 epic poems of Tamil. This is an advanced form of Tamil, taking into consideration that a language has to evolve from its earlier stages to lipi, then dialect, then language, and a rich cultural expression. Let us, even if you allow about 5,000 years for the language to evolve, this date can be pushed back around to 17,000 years at least, which means around 20,000 years back there was an advanced civilization. In addition to that, we do have advanced architectural marvels, which even today you cannot think of doing it. Now when you go to Mahabalipuram, we see a lot of places. Now how many of you have seen near Krishna's Butterbar, you find a micro drilling finely executed? How is it possible without the technology possible? Without the technology being made available to them. And you just look at Ajanta and Ellora, the type of construction they have made could not have been made possible without the help of advanced mathematics and trigonometry. So the advanced scientific concepts in India is found in all the texts which we have right now. Now in this text you find the exact speed of light more precise than that of what is being found by latest science. And you find the DNA and wireless genetics is also found. Then you do find trigonometry, the advanced calculus has been given to the world by Kerala. This is much before calculus was invented by Rene Descartes. And apart from that, you see, Hinduism is not actually a religion. Hinduism is a way of life, as Dr. Radhakrishnan used to put it. Many people mistake Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma. Both are entirely different. Hinduism is a name given to us by Westerners who came to India, who were unable to pronounce the name Sindh, and then they called it a Hind. Then whoever was living that area was called Hindus, and the faith system they had, they called it as Hinduism. But this was a later development. Earlier, Sanatana Dharma was prevalent, and what we have in today is also Sanatana Dharma, though many people corrupt it by saying that it is Hinduism. What we now have is Sanatana Dharma, excepting for people who make it as a business to promote themselves. It is, for them, it is Hinduism. Hinduism is a concept, Sanatana Dharma is a concept which inquires into the cosmological nature of things, the nature of birth, nature of death, the reason for suffering, and salvation. And now, this is not a written text. If you are looking at any other religion today, if somebody was to ask you, what is the book should I follow for Hinduism? Many people do ask me, either by phone or by emails or by way of comments. And it's a very, very tricky question to answer to people who are asking what textbook one should follow Hinduism. Generally we come and say, normally say the Brahma Sutras, Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana. But it doesn't mean that if you do not read them, you are not a Hindu. And nobody can be excommunicated from Hinduism. There is no strict procedure for excommunicating somebody from Hinduism, nor is there a provision for somebody to be allowed back. Hinduism is a way of life. If he follows certain principles, certain things enunciated in Hinduism and Veda and the Smritis. Smritis are like IPC. They are given by people at a later date. If you follow them, people take you as a Hindu. For example, the fundamentals are what they say, Annan Anindya Tatpratam, that is, you have to respect food, you should not you should not insult food by wasting them. Then again, Matru Devo Bhava, respect mother, Pitru Devo Bhava, Achari Devo Bhava, Atidhi Devo Bhava, respect mother, give respect to father, respect to your guru. Then again you give respect to your guest. Then how are you supposed to speak? These come in Taittiriya Upanishad. They come, it is Shikshavalli, it comes. Then again they say, now Satyana Brahmati Davyam, that means never speak anything other than truth. And even when you speak the truth, you should be Satyam Bruyat, that is, you have to speak the truth. Hitam Bruyat, you should be speaking it in such a way, even truth does not hurt somebody else. So these are the basic tenets that the people have laid out. And the highest dharma, the dharma is something which one has to perform because it ought to be performed. Dharma is a very, very serious concept. It cannot be explained. As Bhagavad Gita in Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna, Arjuna asks, what is dharma? Every time you keep on changing the meaning of dharma. Krishna says, see, dharma is ati sukshma. This is very subtle. It is very difficult even for very learned people. For Panditas also, it is very difficult to determine. Right? But even in that case, it is found out, it can be defined as an action arising depending on the person, the circumstances, the environment and the impulsion which he has to perform a duty. At no point of time we will have any of the things not in conflict with each other. So it is very difficult. So the simplest solution to follow dharma is to follow the Shastras or to listen to your conscience if you have been following Vedas. That is most important. If you are Satyana Brahmati Davyam, that is, you should not do something apart from what is said as true. And Kuchalana Brahmati Davyam, what is not good for others, you are not supposed to do. So these are the basic tenets. And Hinduism is one religion which accommodates all thoughts, because Hinduism, unlike other religions, it is not an institutionalized one. Hinduism is not institutionalized. You don't have a structure. You don't have a supreme authority. Today people come and tell me that we have Shankar Matas, Acharyas and Vaishnava Sampradaya. Sorry, these are only places to inform people, to inform information from the Vedas to other people. It is not an institution like a Pope does. Right? If a Pope gives an order, you are supposed to obey. Otherwise, you are excommunicated, you are not even considered as belonging to that group. As far as Hinduism is concerned, it's not so. These are people who simply follow them. So these tenets we follow in Hinduism. So in Hinduism, number one, there is no institutional. It is not institutionalized. Second, it is a question of personal choice. You like to be a Hindu, you follow something, you follow it. And there is a place for people who have different views. That is Nastika. In normal Sanskrit, is meant to mean a Nastika is one who does not believe in God. In Hinduism, Nastika is one who does not believe in the authenticity of Vedas. That means, Sabda Pramana it is called. If you don't believe in the authenticity or do not take Veda as your basic premise, you are a Nastika. But still you are a Hindu. For example, you take Nyaya. Nyaya is not technically It's a Nastika system. Now, for example, you will be surprised. Technically speaking, yoga is also Nirishwara, accepting the fact that Patanjali has kept the Ishvara Pranidhana, that is the concept of God he has kept. Otherwise, it would have been totally different from the concept of Vedas. So, then you have Charvakas, totally hedonistic system. Then it is also it is called also Hinduism. Then Jainism is accommodated. Buddhism is not, I should not use the term accommodated. It is part of Hinduism. That is, diverse opinions are available in Hinduism. Now, these divergent opinions do not mean that Hinduism is divided, because the basic concept of Hinduism is different in that, since it is personal, as there are so many individuals, so are the thought processes, and so are the processes they undertake to realize oneself, how they handle their emotions, how they reach God, how they realize reality. So, based on individuals' intentions, these go. When these go like this, then, which means that as many individuals there, as many processes are available. So, that is the greatness of Hinduism. So, such a beautiful concept could not have been possible had it not been present for quite some time in Bharatavarsha. India is normally called Bharatavarsha. Now, there is a difference between Bharatavarsha and Bharatkhanda. Bharatavarsha is not India. It encompasses the whole world. I will deal with it later. Now, when I started exploring for the past 10 years, I found some astonishing facts. Number one, fact is, whatever we are doing today, whatever practices we have today, they do have a scientific validity. That is our present scientific validity. As far as I am concerned, I hold the term science also little suspect, because it depends on various variable factors, including science. Science, as far as I am concerned, is a workable hypothesis. It's not a certainty. A good scientist will come and tell you it is only a higher later probability is anticipated in science. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. And you will be surprised to find that all the great mathematicians, all great scientists were philosophers. And they have reservations about the validity of science. They would also tell you right from Bohr, Niels Bohr, Einstein, all these people, they will come back and tell you the present quantum theory is consistent with Indian thought. So that is one thing I have found. That is the greatness of the Indian religion and its validity. And it's a resilience. It doesn't shun anything. It accepts everything. For example, many of you may know there is a system called Agama. That is how you build the temples, how you maintain them, what are the procedures to be adopted. Really speaking, no temple worship is mentioned in the Vedas. In fact, Vedas never speak of temples at all. And Vedas also definitely do not tell you that you should go to people. You should go to temples every day. Now, how does it come about? Now, what happened was, at a particular time, as a process of growth comes in, there normally in every society you will find some people for you, for your thought, and some people for against your thought. Now, people who were against it, they thought they would like to finish off this Sanatana Dharma. They wanted to actually twist everything. They started building temples. Now, when you look at it in Vedas, I am not digressing, just follow it, little complex thought because people may not be aware of it. In Vedas, when you start mentioning, you will find curious facts. You will find a lot of gods and goddesses being worshipped. The primary god being Agni. Then you will find Varuna, Vayu, Rudra, then you have Narayana, Vishnu, Durga, Lakshmi. All these people are being used there, worshipped there. But curiously, you will not find Shiva very explicitly, excepting the fact that you will find Shiva name Namah Shivaya Cha Shivadharaya Cha in Sri Rudram. It is embedded. Apart from that, there is not much, there is no serious mention of Shiva. I'll come back to that later in my future broadcast. It has a special significance. Now, so many gods are also worshipped there in Vedas. That is called polytheism. That means you worship a lot of people, a lot of gods and goddesses. That is polytheism. Then again, when you start finding the suttas, you will find this god is the greatest. For example, you take, Narayana Sukta, Narayanam Mahageyam Vishwatmanam Parayanam Narayana Paro Jyotiratma Narayana Parah Yatya Genjit Jagat Sarvam Drishyate Suyate Vivaha. Which means here in Narayana Sukta, they will highlight only Narayana. They will say Narayana is the supreme deity. Then, when you go to Vishnu, please understand Vishnu is different from Narayana. I'll again, as usual, come back and tell you the difference. Vishnu Nugam Vedhyani Prabho Jamyapati Bhani Vime Rajajagam Subho Askabhaya Uttaragam Chatatam Chakramana Tedor Gayo Vishnu Radam Vishnu 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 Yapret Vishnu Drumati Vaishnavati Vishnave. They just speak highly only of Vishnu, and they will set aside all the gods. The same thing will have in Sri Rudram. And when you talk about Durga Suktam or Sri Suktam also, this tendency of praising one god, keeping it at a higher pedestal at the cost of other gods and goddesses, is a process called henotheism. This is a process. It is a human nature. It is not, it's not a textbook where you start thinking. See, if you want to believe, when you go and ask a child, whom do you like most? Your mother, father or mother, the child will definitely give you an answer. You have 2 or 3 children, we may try to bluff ourselves. Which child you like better? You may like one son or one daughter better than somebody else. Similarly, when you start practicing religion, especially Saguna Aradhana, that is when you are praying a certain God, that your mind will concentrate better only when you think it is better than anything else. Probably logically we think that it is not right, but again, see, logic doesn't apply to emotions, right? Logic and emotion never mixes. So only when you start thinking that way, you start realizing it. This is a step in Bhakti Yoga. So this is not wrong. See, when Sri Vaishnavas come and say Vishnu is superior to Shiva, nobody need to get upset. Similarly, a Shaivite comes and tells you that Shiva is superior to Vishnu, fine, no problem. What is your take on it? If somebody likes something better, you leave it. See, I start taking food. I like taking sambar rice. Somebody likes curd rice. You just can't say sambar rice is the best. And now should the other guy say curd rice is the best? It is a question of personal taste, right? Now he is trying to satisfy his hunger. Similarly, in a spiritual course, everybody tries to find out his own path. So our Vedas also are individuals. There are as many individuals have traveled a path. So many paths are available. Now, let me also tell you some interesting fact of Vedas. The only religion in the world which tells you that if you do not follow me, you will go to hell. Hinduism never tells you that. Now, it says, I am just giving you, these are the things people have found to be good. If you think it's good, we have found them to be good. If you find any of the processes they followed is good for you, you please follow them. That's it. Now, I'll tell you an interesting anecdote in Bhagavad Gita. Now, Lord Krishna, in about 700 slokas, he teaches Arjuna Bhagavad Gita. Then, toward the end, closure, in the 18th chapter, he comes and he tells Arjuna, I taught you Guhyat Guhyatamam. That is secret among secrets. Highest secret. That is Bhagavad Gita. I told you. Now, it is for you to evaluate them and follow whichever you feel as best for you. He could have easily said, you follow me Otherwise, you will be doomed to hell. But it's a different matter where Krishna says, that's the Karna mantra. That is, you leave everything, you come to me. I mean, you just believe in me, have faith on me. That is the Karna mantra. That context is different. The message here by Krishna is very clear. That whatever options are available to you, you consider them and take what is best. So, such a high level of civilization could not have come from nowhere. So, it should have existed. Now, as far as proof is concerned, see, now I will come back to some of the questions that have come. Today I have selected about 3 or 4 questions only because some of the questions were quite complex. I forgot to tell you that I've been running a blog site under WordPress under the name Ramanan50wordpress.com. It has a total hit of about 16 million today and about 10,300 subscribers. Where it is totally devoted to validating Hinduism with available data from scientific sources. The sources are archaeology, etymology, foreign literature, Indian literature, that is Sanskrit, and my mother tongue Tamil, and also wherever I can get a good reliable translation from other regional languages in India. Then from historians from abroad, classical historians from Greece, that is Strabo, Pliny, Megasthenes, then Russian researchers. Then I have quotes from even from Bible. I have also taken references from the world literature, from Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, and of course, not to say the least, from our Puranas and Idihasas. So these are the sources. Then archaeologically validated information, and of course, most importantly, is the astronomical data being provided in our text. There is always a misconception among Indians that Indians have never written history. They never keep history books clean. They never write whatever they have done. So Indian history is blank. Unfortunately, nothing can be farther from true. India is the only country, the only civilization that has kept a meticulous record. Unfortunately, under 1200 year rule of foreigners, we have been taught so, and without checking up a record, we also say that there is no record. Who said that? What are your inscriptions you find in your temples? What are they but nothing but record? Any epigraph, that is inscriptions you find in a temple, they consist of 2 parts. Any part of India, you will find it will have 2 parts. One part, wherever it is written, it will be written, one portion of it will be written either in Sanskrit or Brahmi, regional Brahmi script, and the second portion will be written in the language which is spoken in that region. For example, it's in Tamil, it will be written in Tamil Brahmi, in old Tamil Vatteluthu. In Karnataka, you will find Hale Kannada. In Telugu also, you will find that. Now, in the first part, the genealogy of the king and the region which is being ruled will be described. And the second part is called Nivanda. Nivanda is in Sanskrit means, today very loosely you can say edicts or the grants given by the king to various people and the temple. Now, these record year-wise what is given to whom. Now you find the epigraphs, most of the epigraphs, this is one step, epigraphs are temple. The second thing is copper plate, that is especially you find in Tamil Nadu the copper plates. Oldest copper plates are being found, Animagalam Chepped copper plates you find, Adichanallur you find that, Animagalam Chepped you find, and this Animagalam Chepped, the total Chepped means it is written in copper. Its total weight is 32.5 kgs. And now, you know one funniest thing? That copper plate is not available in India. It is unfortunately it is in Belgium. Now they have kept it there because it has gone there because others have been ruling. Holland, Belgium, they were ruling. Dutch have been ruling there. Holland, it is there. Sorry, not in Belgium. Holland, they are keeping it there. Now it is written by Rajendra Chola I, the son of the great Rajaraja Chola. There, this is called Anemangalam Shepherd. Now, these are the history that has been written. Now, how many of us know about the great historian India has ever produced? Is the Raja Kalhana. He is a king from Kashmir. He has traced the genealogy and king's list of Kashmir and also that of kings of India right from the period of Yudhishthira up to date, up to himself, that is Kalhana. That is about the 10th century he has given. In addition to that, you find a lot of information from other areas that is from Tamil Nadu. Now, many of you may be surprised to know thanks to this Aryan invasion theory, many people think that Tamil is against Sanskrit, Tamil is against Vedas. Unfortunately, this is absolute nonsense. I don't want to use an unparliamentary word here, otherwise I would definitely use it. That is what they have done. This Aryan invasion theory is totally wrong. I will read out when I am replying the question. I have written very in detail about all those things. Now, when Aryan invasion theory is proved false, and all the people from the South India were a part of the total culture of India. Now, they contribute. Now, the Rigvedas mention, Ramayana mentions, Mahabharata mentions, Chera, Chola, Pandya. Rigveda mentions the material that they can get it, and also specifically the pearls, honey. I have written a detailed post on that, what they can procure from there. And there are records to indicate in Tamil and also in Ramayana and Mahabharata. In Ramayana, Sita Swayamvar, Tamil kings have participated. In Mahabharata, Draupadi Swayamvar, Tamil kings have participated. Why go to that extent? In Nala Damayanti, that is the ancestor of, they antedate Rama. He has participated, the Tamil kings have participated. To such an extent, Cholas declare that descendants of Ikshvaku. They are the descendants of Solar dynasty. In fact, Manu is the Dravida. I will come back to later when I start my future broadcast. Now, coming to the other points. These are the facts that have intrigued me. And whatever facts the Puranas have said, the Puranas nothing bad. Puranas means very old. Now we have been taught to believe when you say it is Purana, it is a story. I'm sorry, I don't know how it has come. Today when you start reading Puranas, people think that as if you are studying a story. I'm sorry, Purana in Sanskrit means very old. That is a old history. Today what you call as prehistory. That is how that is English. Like pre-sold cars, some nonsense. Prehistory. The very old history, ancient history. And itihasas, what are itihasas? This is thus, which means this is how it has happened. Now, these two factors are validated when I started checking up. The facts mentioned in the Puranas, whatever they have described, in terms of geography, in terms of languages, in terms of personages, they tally with time frame from other literature, from foreign as well as other regional languages. Since they are written in English, since they are written in Sanskrit, I normally compare them whether it is mentioned in Tamil literature because it is equally low. I don't mind comparing it with any other regional languages. Unfortunately, my language, I am not good at any other language excepting in Kannada, which I can speak fluently, not I can write. I've been requesting, and I am requesting people who are listening to this, please forward information on Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism in your regional languages, in your language, so that I may integrate. But I have found that nothing runs contradictory what is said in Purana. Now let me add also, in the sense that Now when you look at in Purana and Itihas, certain information is given. For example, Jatayu in Ramayana, he was killed and such and such. He was killed while on going and see Ravana was abducting, he was killed. Now, you will find in some of the temples, for example, you take Vaidyeeswaran Koil in Tamil Nadu is a place Jatayu is supposed to have been killed. This is a place which is near to Mahayavaram in Tanjavur district in Tamil Nadu. Right? Now, they say, it is a place, the local legend says, temple legend, Sthala Purana, says Jatayu was killed here. This exactly tallies the route taken by Hanuman and the route taken by Rama also. And it also, even if it mentions 2 or 3 places, it also tallies. So similarly, all the facts mentioned in the Puranas proved to be right, so also with the Itihas. So this is the reason I have started writing it. Now this has become a long introduction. But the reason being that some of the question, more than a question, I've been asked certain questions where I have to defend. I mean, there I have to not defend, I have to explain as to the rationale behind what I am writing. So that is what I have written. So I will intimate as and when I start new broadcast through Facebook, I will let know people as to what subject I will be speaking, and I will make it in 2 parts. One is whatever I would like to speak on, I will intimate in one. The second part will contain answers for queries sent by my reader. Number 1. I have received a query that please suggest mantras for undisturbed sleep. Right. There are 2 types of mantras. 2 mantras are given. One is those who want to make a note also note it. This runs thus. This you are supposed to say that after you lie down. That is, it is also essential that you will have to wash your feet and go to bed and dry it. You should not go to bed with wet feet. Wash your feet, dry it, and after lying down, after keeping your head on the pillow, you have to recite the following mantra. Kasile snanam, Kishkinda bhojanam, Sitambara dharisanam, Siva Siva Nataraja. Kasile snanam, Kishkinda bhojanam, Sitambara dharisanam, Siva Siva Nataraja. After reciting this thrice, you will have to slowly tap the pillow on which you are lying thrice. That's all. This is for people who have Saivite leanings, I would say that. The other one is that 2 slokas are there for people who worship Lord Vishnu. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanuddhara, Tatta Sri Vidayo Bodhir, Dhirvanitir Matir Mama. The second one, Ananyaha Shintayantoma Yejana Paryupasade, Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. The second one is called the Karna Mantra. I will explain in detail what is Karna Mantra. Now I repeat the Vaishnava Mantra again. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanuddhara, Tatra Stri Vidayo Bodhir Mama. Ananyaha Shintayantoma Yejana Paryupasade, Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. These 2 slokas appear in the Bhagavad Gita. This will do. And the second, now there is also one mantra. When you want to travel or you want to have a hassle-free travel, even when you are going out, this is customary. The following mantra is customary. That is, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanuddhara, Tatra Sri Vidayo Bodhir, Dhirvanitir Matir Mama. Again, one more mantra. Egadanda Yudmahe, Vakratunda Yadimahi, Tanno Dandi Prajodaya. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanuddhara, Tatra Sri Vidayo Bodhir, Dhirvanitir Matir Mama. One sloka. Another sloka is that Egadanda Yudmahe, Vakratunda Yadimahi, Tanno Dandi Prajodaya. These 2 mantras you can chant before you embark on any travel, even if it is local, so that you will have a hassle-free travel. Then some questions have come regarding Shraddha. I have written a couple of posts on Shraddha, including Shraddha Samayal. That is what you do for deceased ancestors. Shraddha iti Shraddha. That is what you are supposed to do with your faith, full faith and physical strain. It is Shraddha. Shastras have no sanction to have it performed by somebody else. For our convenience, you cannot twist things. Right? People always say that today conditions have changed, what have we changed, no, we can't do it, this, that. See, there are two things. Either you follow Shastra or you don't follow Shastra. As simple as that. Shastra has given you a lot of leeways also. Some prayachitta, so what are the alternates you can make? That also they have given. Now, having said that, please Google Shraddha Ramanan 50 plus Ramanan 50. Shraddha Ramanan 50, you will get a lot of articles, including Samayal and everything, and how to perform this thing in Shraddha, Agaya, all those details you will get. Now, some specific question I will ask. Number one, the question is, should all the children perform Shraddha for the deceased? If, for example, 3 brothers are there, should all the 3 perform Shraddha independently at house, in each of their houses, or if one does it enough, if one performs Shraddha, the others can go and then stand behind him, sit out. See, my answer is based on Vaidyanatha Dikshiviyam. It is the authority for Shraddha. And also it is based on common sense. Shraddha has to be performed by all children, because when children bring you up, they don't feed one child and they do not starve the other child. Because your eldest brother is performing the karma kriyas does not mean that you should not perform Shraddha. It is not logical, it is not also correct. So the answer is, all can perform Shraddha. In fact, they should perform Shraddha. Second, can women wear Upaveda? Well, this is a controversial subject. Let me give you the answer. Women can and must wear Upaveda. The reason is, the Upaveda is not the domain of only male. Soul has no gender. It is for jnana. It is for getting knowledge. So there is no discrimination. Vedas do not say that you are not supposed to, ladies are not supposed to wear Upaveda. Where is it said women should not wear Vedas? Please understand, let me quote. There was a lot of argument also. If you go to my women can wear Upaveda, you will find a lot of controversy and people abusing me also. See, I am a man who gets fired on both sides. On the one side, people tell me that I am a Hindutva guy, I am too righteous. On the second side, the Sanatanavadi, the people who are more traditional than me, they come and say you are diluting Hinduism. I don't know, I am just quoting from the source. If somebody asks me, from where are you quoting, I will quote Veda. Very, very authentic source, like Smritis. That's all. That's all I do. Now, when you look at it, there are lot of rishis, women, who have composed suktas for Vedas. Kartayani, Gargi, they have compiled suktas for Vedas. If you want to learn Veda, you should have Upaveda. Now, if you want to contribute a sukta, you should study Vedas, right? If you want to study Veda, you should have Upaveda. So, if a woman has contributed to sukta, she should have been eligible to read Veda, which means she should have had Upaveda. That is the simple answer. Okay? As far as Upaveda. Similarly, Shraddha, if there is no male offspring is available, can women perform Shraddha? Yes, they can do it. I can quote a precedent. Sita has performed Shraddha for Dasaratha. Please For more details, please Google Sita performed Sadhana Ramanan 50, you will get the answer. So, these are the basic normal questions. I have just chosen about 3 or 4 questions. Then one question which is slightly what I will say. You will know what I am trying to say. I will give an answer. I think it's already 45 minutes. I'll try to conclude. Otherwise, I'll take it on to the next broadcast, which I'll intimate you through my page. Now, this question, let me take it. This is a very interesting question. One second, please hold on. I got it here. Yeah. Okay. Number 1, questions on Hinduism. Number 1, Hinduism or any other religion is not constant. I'll repeat slowly. This is a little controversial, but it's worth replying. Many people do have this doubt. Hinduism or any other religion is not constant. It evolves, changes over years. There must be a golden period and there must be a decline. There must be a decline. And please explain how will you divide the history of Hinduism in different yugas. For example, when temple culture started, when caste system divides, when feudal system. Okay. Number 1. Now, the question of evolution of a religion does not apply in the normal term which is applicable to other Abrahamic religions. It is not applicable to Hinduism. For a simple reason, the very definition of religion, the certain beliefs, structured beliefs, only if you follow, it is qualifies for religion. But Hinduism slightly more than that. Number 1, it is not, as I said earlier, number 1, it is not institutionalized. It doesn't have a structure as you find it in other religions like Christianity, Judaism or Islam. Right? And when there is no institutionalization, there is no question of evolving. The evolution here in Hinduism takes place in the individual. The religion here, loosely, the way of life of Hindus or Sanatana Dharma is for the individual. It is for the individual to evolve. If there are thousands of hundreds of 10,000s of people are there, 10,000 people evolve depending on their predispositions and vasanas, their attitude, their aptitude, and what they have with them. So this is how they develop. So the question of evolution is not for the religion. The question of evolution is for the individual. Though information, as I said, is profound in Hinduism. So many diverse thoughts are there because so many diverse people have attempted to realize Godhood, self, whatever name you call it, reality. So, depending on one's own spiritual level, you should be able to evolve. So, religion is not something, realizing God or realizing a reality is not a question of mind. It is a question of heart. For example, you see, when somebody comes and tells me, sir, can you see God? I've been giving lectures, I tell them, I'm sorry, you cannot see God. Just like you cannot see hunger, you cannot see pain, you can feel, you can understand, you can merge. That's all. If somebody says, I love my child, tell me, you show me, you can't show it. But the evolution since it depends on the individual emotions, individual's approach, after all, these things are through emotions. So regulation of emotions is one of the easiest ways to reach reality. Reason you can go, Jnana Yoga, it is one of the toughest yogas possible. Then again Karma Yoga, it is Chitta Prajna. That's again another tough part. So, The question of evolution does not arise in the case of Hinduism. Degradation. Now, what do we mean by degradation? Now, for argument's sake, not argument, Puranas say that Satya Yuga, the first cycle of times in time scale, there are 4 yuga: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. Satya Yuga was 100% perfect. It is supposed to rest on 4 legs. That is again a symbolism. Now it will sidetrack. I will deal later. And Treta Yuga, it went 1 notch lower. So degradation began after Treta Yuga, Krita Yuga. That is also called first Yuga, Krita Yuga. Then after Krita Yuga, second has gone. Third is gone in Dwapara. Now it is on Kali Yuga. It is standing on the 4th. Now, in terms of answering this question, we are around after 5012 or so, Kali Yuga has come. So, they are on the last leg. The degradation is final. The degradation, now let's not worry, it's not going to come tomorrow or after 10 years. Now the time span for Kali Yuga is 4,32,000 years. Now we are hardly in 5,000. Right? So, we are in the 4th level. So, the degradation, it started from Treta Yuga, now it has come to Kali Yuga, and the degradation will be complete. Now, the next question is, when temple culture started? So, even though the exact date cannot be mentioned, it is very clear that the temple culture was not very clearly in existence during Ramayana period. Because I am yet to find a reference to temple. Leave alone Vedas. Vedas do not mention temple at all. In Ramayana, there is no reference to temple. Which God did Rama worship? I have written an article. People may come and tell me that Rama has worshipped in Rameshwaram. But again, I have to find it in Ramayana, right? I have not found a reference. So, but one thing what I can say, as I said earlier at the beginning, the Agama system came probably during the period of Ramayana, that is the time when sage Vishwamitra banished his 56 sons to south, that is Dravida, that is south, Dravida Desa. So he has banished them. When they came here, they were under the impression, those people who are living in the south of India and Satpura were barbarians, and they never had any, they do not have any culture. Having come down here, they found a culture which was equivalent, if not better than the culture they were practicing, south of India. And what they did was, one of the descendants, Abhastamba, he compiled Sutra, that is a treatise, incorporating some good points from Dravida Desa and what was being believed in Aryavarta, and gave on Abhastamba Sutra that is being followed by people, especially in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka and Andhra. There may be some Katyayana Sutra also, some people follow. Now, close on to that heels, I said earlier, there was a system called Agama. I have written in detail, it's too detailed. This being a first lecture, I am giving you a lot of references. One by one I will go. I am giving a bird's eye view. Agama system was developed initially as a heretic, that is to go against the Vedas, building up temple construction, which probably should have started toward the close of Ramayana. No solid evidence. But again, taking into consideration some of the temples having been built by Chola kings and Chera kings and Pandya kings South India, I think it has to be proved. It's very difficult to prove. Unfortunately, some of the information which we have is very difficult to date, especially in Indian philosophy and Sanatana Dharma. Because many people today talk about simple. Whenever they come, very loosely they will talk about carbon dating. What is carbon dating? How many people know carbon dating? Carbon dating, please check up. Carbon dating is useless for any object or artifact happens to be over 50,000 year older. Case finished. If your date is, if you are older than, if an artifact is over 50,000 years, you can't evaluate. Which means you can you can validate anything within 50,000 year time frame. The second bomb comes later. If any atomic explosions have taken place, the carbon date reading will not be accurate. It cannot be right. Please cross check. So this goes through the window. That is your carbon dating. Okay. Now I'll tell you one more. Again, astronomy dating. I have also written, many people have written about the dates of Rama, Krishna and Puranic events, Itihasa, based on the horoscopes and celestial phenomena like Grahana mentioned in Puranas and Itihasas, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Unfortunately, it is not also valid. With that, I will conclude this session, and the next session will be on Saturday and Sunday. The date and time I will intimate through my Facebook link. Please tune in for that. Meanwhile, you can browse my site www.ramanan50wordpress.com. Please offer your comment. Even if your comments are against what I have written, they run contrary to what I have written, please do post them. Please ensure that civility is maintained. Mr. Akshat Agarwal, I am sorry, you have given very good questions. I have been able to answer partly only your first question. Since it is already 1 hour over, I had to give some background in the light of whatever you have written. I will be answering the other points you have raised in my broadcast. Thank you, Mr. Akshat. Even though you differ from my views, I welcome the tone and tenor of your comment. Thank you. Thank you for all the participants who have been hearing this broadcast. Thank you. Bye.